Hey everybody, welcome to Wisdom Wednesdays. I'm Coach Crystal, and it's so wonderful to be with you tonight. I just want to welcome you into this night. If you've just joined us, if you've never been to a Wisdom Wednesday before, or if you're new to our community, we have a mantra that starts each and every session with our clients, and it just goes like this. A lot of things happen before this, and I guarantee a lot of things are going to happen after this. But I promise to be here with you now. Please be here with me now. Tonight, we're going to be talking about presence and being and the big S word, which is spirituality. And I didn't want this to be a one-sided conversation because most of the time when we're talking about spirituality, we're actually sometimes conflating our religious practices with the growth of spirituality. And I just wanted to talk to a friend. I just want to have this conversation with you tonight about the S word, the big S word that I think we sometimes jump to when we want to explain a lot of things that we don't understand. And so tonight, I want to welcome our guest, Meshi Chavez. Meshi is an artist, a practitioner of being, someone who is, I think, in constant communication with the divine in a way that allows him to be present in the world. And although I think that's a lifelong practice, and we'll continue to kind of parse that out tonight, I wanted to have a conversation and allow you to ask questions as well, so we can really unearth this thing. A lot of people are struggling today because there are bad things happening in the world. There is death, there is anger, there is power that is superseding our own emotions. People are getting to the point where their hurt is becoming other people's hurt. And I want us to be able to zoom out just a little bit tonight as we honor the people and the lives that have been lost, but also to kind of check in with who we are being and how we're actually giving more love into the world. So, Meshi, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
No,
it's so exciting.
Yeah. So, I just wanted to open this up because you and I have had several conversations about, really the pathway to getting to who you are in the world, right? All of us walk in this pathway. And I'm often struck by the amount of things, rituals, understandings that you've been trained in and that kind of come together as who you are in the world. So if you could give our viewers just spark notes of your kind of spiritual background and how that plays into how you do what you do in the world.
Yeah, to kind of get a better idea of that, you probably should have interviewed my mother.
Oh.
We were just talking about this last night. And, even I think it began as a child. I really started questioning. Yeah. And I think it really began with asking big questions at a very young age. Mm-hmm. And when I was younger, I tried everything. Any religion, I tried it, and I think I got baptized in 3 different traditions, and and then in high school I rebelled and I decided I was a witch, and then I decided I didn't believe in anything, and then at 19 I went to India to go find myself spiritually, and thought I was going to be a monk, and found a teacher there, and she turned me around and said, "Your teachings are in the States. You need to go back there." And then I came back here. That was around the age of 20. And then I came back here, and that's when I really settled into. I follow Lakota teachings, and so for the past 25 years, that's going to age me some. I've been following, a native tradition
Yeah.
and going fairly deeply into it.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's interesting, right? That your teacher, someone that you were going to seek information from, turned you around and said, no, no, your learning is where you came from, right? And so I know that oftentimes people are actually trying to push against that core of where they come from, right? That kind of training, that background. And, you know, a lot of it has been kind of couched in the word religion.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think in the last few years, people have, you know, created these slogans like, no, it's not about religion, it's about relationship, right? And so, what we think about as relationship, how do you see that now in your life with the Lakota tradition?
Well, I want to jump back to just the part of our conversation we were having the other night, and to
Yeah.
say that, like, the core of the tradition is that there's nothing between you and the creator.
Mm.
That there is no one between you and creation.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's the basis of what I've found in these teachings, and kind of that homecoming, really,
Yeah.
that you were saying before. And actually, you know, on a very personal level, in my 40-something years old,
Mm-hmm.
I think that I'm closer now to the places I began than I ever have been. And I took this huge trajectory to try to figure it out to come back to a homecoming.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, if I could shout out to anyone, is to say, you know, lean into where you came from.
Mm-hmm.
Lean into your traditions, or lean into your elders, or lean into your teachings, and actually investigate them
Mm-hmm.
before you go seeking something else. And I say that a little tongue in cheek, because I did a lot of seeking, but that's what it took me to, was coming back home.
Yeah. Yeah. And I, you know, my pathway was very similar. I didn't make it all the way to India, right? But I did shift, right? Like from the upbringing of kind of Presbyterian Baptist churches out into like shaving my head and becoming a Buddhist, and then like going into Taoism, and then like looking at all of the spiritual traditions of the Orisha and thinking that, well, maybe that's where my pathway is. And then when my son was born, I did exactly what you're saying. I had to go back to the beginning, and I was like, oh, now I see, right? Because understanding comes after experience, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times when we're trying to understand something first, we're missing it. And, you know, I will say that the other part of the conversation we were having the other night, right, was about, well, I think, well, I've had this theory forever, and you know, I just want to be clear. I'm a coach. I'm not, you know, I'm not here to prescribe any type of religious or spiritual theory to anybody. But I've often had the theory that people choose their religious practice by the way that they learn. Right? Like when we have this large amount of information and we do have this individual choice to make, we go, well, what's speaking to us? What allows me to understand quicker? What allows me to put myself in the place of transformation quicker, right? And so when you were seeking or being called, what was that big question that was pulling you in those different directions?
Oh man. What was the big question that was pulling me in different directions? I wanted to be loved. And I felt unlovable.
Yeah.
And I felt that I didn't love myself. And you know, I had a very colorful youth, and you know, I went through a lot of things, and I think that at that time I didn't feel like I had a place in the world. And so I think that my big question that took me really now all around the world, and sitting with some of the most amazing people on this planet, like I found myself in situations where I'm like, how am I sitting with this person?
Yeah.
And what does that say about me and my journey, that I would find these people that would reflect these things back to me?
Yeah.
You know, And so I think, I mean, it's so simple, but really it came down to me wanting to love and be loved by creation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 I mean, even just that, like by creation and through creation, right? Like you're a maker. And
Yeah.
I just kind of remembered this the other day. I was in my own kind of practice and I was like, what is my big question? I feel like everyone
Mm.
is trying to find their purpose, but everyone is born with skills and a question, gifts and a question, right? The skills come after the gift, after you kind of sharpen your pathway. But my big question has always been like, how do people find God? So when I would notice that people knew God in whatever they called it, right, or whatever they were studying, I would just like be so attracted to them, right? I'd just be like,
Yeah.
well, how are you doing that? How are
Mm.
you having this conversation? How are you like still like paying attention to what's happening over here, but you're really living on your own planet? Like, how is this happening? Right?
Yeah.
And it struck me today. And actually, it struck me last week because I was with some clients who were really emotionally trying to translate what had happened in Buffalo, right? Showing up, trying to do their work, but they were over kind of, there was a haze, there was a shadow of this other thing looming. And I gave them permission, at least for an hour, to be on your own planet, right? Because we've done it the hard way.
Yeah.
Right? And the same love that you're thinking about, I think, is also the same way that I think about people who I was attracted to, who had this different type of perspective, and it was freedom. It was freedom from the noise and the chatter and the monkey mind and the gotta do, gotta say, gotta be, right? And it was really that kind of return again, like you're saying, to home.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, in some ways it's this ability to feel deeply or care deeply
Mm-hmm.
and still be able to see the beauty
Yeah.
and to taste the quiet and to revel in the isness
Mm-hmm.
of everything that's happening around us. Because the truth is, I would say this, the truth is we live in the laws of this universe. This one particular one
Right.
is that there is a day and there is a night,
Mm-hmm.
and there is equal amount of, we have the masculine, we have the feminine, we have the binary in between,
Mm-hmm.
that like, and this is back to the core teachings that I've learned is that, this idea of right and wrong and good and bad and day and night, we're always going to be moving through that spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
always. And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter how enlightened we become, we still move through those spectrum, but it's the ability to hold the perspective that you're going to go through that back and forth,
Yeah.
and to know that you're not the back and forth, you're actually the whole thing that's holding it together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I was talking about this with some clients. I think it might have been a year ago now, but there is that image of like a human body and the hands are out and like you see these little points of light in there, right? And I was talking to my clients about this and I was like, just imagine if all of those little points of light inside you are the ways that God is getting information to then make the next decision. But if you are not fully open, if you are not fully standing in your purpose, then the information is cloudy. It's like some of the circuits don't work,
Yeah,
right?
but if you believe in the clouds, then you're cloudy.
Right. Right. If you believe more in the problem than you do in the power that is in you, that's breathing you and me right now, then of course it's going to be more problems. Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we play a much bigger role in this. I always say that I don't always know. I can't always state what I believe, but there are
Mm-hmm.
some truths. There's some truths that I've come to, and there's one truth that I feel I've come to, which is we have a choice,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you can apply it to any situation in your life.
Right.
You have a choice,
Yeah.
and And sometimes we make choice by reaction because we've learned that that's how we make that choice. But it's, again, that idea of radical presence is that moment when you can stop and pause and hold for a moment so you can step and see, and then you can see the choices that are in front of you.
Yeah.
There's
And
always choices.
Yeah. And we talked about this last week when we were talking about mental health. And before we talk about managing choice is really the essence of the human experience, right? And as you're talking about reaction, that moment to pause then elevates our consciousness and our intersection with our intuition, and we're able to respond rather than react, right? A lot of times we're just reacting to the circumstance, situation, or condition around us. But I think this essence of spirituality, right? Like we were talking about this before, where my personal, like in my mind, there's like a little bit of a growth ladder, right? And so no matter what religion you are, the religion is the practice that allows you to be present and perform at a spiritual level, right? And that's spirituality. And I feel like some people jump to spirituality before they've learned the basics of whatever it is, right?
Yeah, and I think that's really trendy right now. And I think it has been for a while. I think that the trend is to approach this conceptually and intellectually. And we can't get there conceptually or intellectually. Like, this, you're a dancer, I'm a dancer. I found myself a tradition where I literally use my body to the Lakota tradition. There's a word called chekiayo, and chekiayo means in white culture it's translated to pray, but that's not the true translation. The translation should be to send a voice. And it's a different translation than to pray. Like, to me, pray is something that's very intellectual. Sending a voice is something that's very embodied, right? And so we have to find how to bring this thing to our spirituality. You were talking about, that the steps, and I was thinking about how, for me, again, like, so simple, but it's chop wood, carry water. That you have to chop wood, carry water. And I don't know if you've ever sat and chopped wood for a couple hours. It sucks.
It's work.
And carrying water sucks. But it's about the presence, and it's about doing the task. And then these things grow. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, right, it's actually tasks. Right.
And the tasks are choices.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I think about this also, right? That I think people choose their religious spiritual practice based on how they learn or what calls to them. I think that religion is the practice to elevate us to being spiritual beings. And I think that most of us who have not been taught how to practice sometimes get lost in all of it.
Yes.
Right? And, in every spiritual tradition, in every kind of large scale, religious practice, there have been people who have missed it or missed the mark because no one taught them how to practice. Right?
Yeah.
Like love. No one taught them how to practice love, forgiveness, grace, like perspective, forgiveness for yourself, not just others. Right? And so then we end up with, what most people call church hurt, or, this kind of hurt that was inflicted by people, not by spirit.
Sure. Right? By people. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking about that. And I'm thinking about, we had Charles West joined us last night for a hypno gift in our life mastery session. And he was talking about the amount of church hurt that he was carrying around and how ultimately he became a healer. Right? Because it's like you said in the beginning, it's when you went to the teacher was like, no, what you need is not here.
Turn around. Go
Right. And those turnaround moments, I think most people think are failure moments.
Right? Yeah, I can't. I'll confess, I was on the ground crying for a few days, and lost, but one of my mentors now that I work with, her name's Denise Fujiwara, and she's my Buto teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And she follows Zen Buddhist teachings. And one of the teachings that comes through her is this saying that not knowing is the most intimate. And it's those turnaround moments that you're talking about where we get lost and we feel that all is lost, that we're actually in the most communication with the divine.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, okay. So I was telling you about this quote earlier, right? That's now on an Airbnb commercial, but I'll bring it up for everybody. It's by Pico Eiler, right? And it literally says, you are only as strong as your readiness to surrender. And so we are often in our lives, Meshi, like practicing being ready for the next bad thing, right? We are not usually practicing to surrender. We're not getting ready to surrender. We're not getting ready to give our gift to for its greatest and highest good. We're just like we're not, people. we were running around here trying to make all this money, but when people walk up to us in need, we walk by. We're not being ready to surrender our belongings, to surrender our day, our time, our schedule, right? Like your readiness, your strength comes from like this readiness to surrender. And in many of these religious and spiritual traditions, right, like we know that there has been a surrender when there is no more there, we talk about like the veil is over, all these things, but when there's no more conscious thought about what's happening in the moment, you just feel connected to the moment.
Yeah. And I think that, one of the things just by you bringing that up that it makes me think about is how when we are unpracticed at presence, when we're unpracticed at practice, when we're unpracticed at stopping, then those surrender moments come huge.
Yeah.
Huge. One of the sayings it made me think of is when we say, oh, we're talking about addicts, we often say, oh, it often will take hitting rock bottom.
Yeah.
Like there are these and I think that we could take that as a metaphor for our spiritual lives where if without a practice and without engaging in a daily practice, then it will often take something as big as hitting whatever your rock bottom looks like.
Exactly. Right. I was, oh no, go.
I was just going to say that, and that's hard to sustain over and over and over again.
Yeah. But when we get in that cycle where we're being called to be present, right? We're being called to do something and we're constantly skirting the issue, or like we're doing as much as we feel comfortable with, then we're going to keep hitting that same rock bottom moment over and over, right? And that's where I think people forget to zoom out and say, oh, I'm in a spiritual cycle. I haven't learned this thing yet, right? So let me go back and remember how to practice so at least my awareness can be big enough to see it coming next time, right? So that I can manage my own power of choice and choose differently and not stay in this rotation of being turned upside down. The other part of that, right, is that I was watching some of your footage earlier, right? Because there's a sign in my office, the little magnet that says "Let go or be dragged," and you have a piece called "Or be dragged," right? And sometimes we're holding on so tightly. There's an amazing woman, I can't remember her name right now, but she has something on Facebook or TikTok, and she's talking about when you try to squeeze sand, it gets out of every crevice. Right? Because you're trying to hold on so tight, right? But when you open your hand, the sand stays right there. It doesn't move, right? You're holding exactly what you need. And so we're grasping to these ideas and notions of ourselves that haven't been practiced, then there's no way we can hold on to them. Like they're not aligned with anything, right?
Yeah. Well, and that holding on, comes back to that idea of surrender. You're only as strong as your readiness to surrender.
Yeah.
And like, how many of us are like, I'm going to surrender like this,
Yes.
like that's
Right.
that's not surrender.
Yeah, right. I'll go, but I gotta bring this, and this. Right.
That's
exactly.
Right. That's right.
Okay, we got some questions in the chat here. Okay, Juanisha says, What would you recommend slash suggest as a practice to re-engage with spiritual awareness or as a way to tap back in?
Hmm. Um, I don't know if that's for me or for you, but
Either both, yeah, whatever.
what one of the things that I am obsessed with right now is I've been reading a book called How to Walk
Mm.
by Thich Nhat, and it's Thich Nhat Hanh, who just passed this last year. Is a very amazing Buddhist monk, and it was one line, and basically the line says, "The definition of kung fu is a meaningful daily practice." And there was a few years back for me where my world got too much,
Mhm.
and my ideas of success got too much.
Mhm.
And I felt like I was failing. And I took a winter and I said, I'm going to be unproductive. And I lit candles and I took baths and I found a little morning practice that I did. And I started carrying a rock in my pocket. And so it's, to me, like, it's to get in touch with the spiritual journey. We think it takes a big thing,
Yeah.
but the truth is that it takes just one meaningful action a day.
Yeah.
Even if it's like, I have some cornmeal that someone gave me, and I was like, what am I going to do with this cornmeal? And so I put out a bowl, and every morning I take a pinch and I say, this is for my ancestors, and I put it in the bowl.
Mhm.
And it's just a thing I do. I don't know if they listen. I don't know if they even like the corn.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's something I do that's a small action.
Yeah.
But I make the effort and the time to do it once a day, and it takes 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But I won't leave the house if I haven't done it.
But it's also an acknowledgement of something you believe, right?
Yes.
And so belief and awareness are, I think, intertwined in a way that once we believe something, we start to see it everywhere, right? And so if you believe that this offering is for your ancestors, then you're going to see them show up in your life, right? That's going to build your awareness to not just think about your ancestors, but to know that, again, you're not alone in this, right? Like every decision and every outcome is not up to you, and that there's a bigger story, there's a bigger narrative, like you have your part to play. And it gives, I think, what a lot of people are missing right now is solace in that it's not your fault. It's not our fault. It's not the bad guy. It's the thing that this person did not become that allowed them to do something harmful, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like in the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? My clients know I say this a lot. I love this, right? In the Dead Sea Scrolls in the book of Thomas, it says, if you bring forth the thing that is within you, it will save you. But if you don't bring forth the thing that is within you, it will kill you. Right? And so many of us like keep it bottled in so long, and we just continue to like shrink and play small and deteriorate and be unhappy. And we're just wondering why, when it's because we didn't give our yes to the thing that's in us.
Yeah. And it makes me think of, there's a story that I heard from an elder about, when we, in our ceremonies, when we pray, we use a pipe, and there's no drugs or anything in the pipe. It's just a mixture of tobacco. But on the very first pipe, he was telling the story of the very first pipe, and that on the stem, at the edge of the stem, there used to hang two herbs, and they would rest on the lip. And if your tongue touched one, it would bring health. And if the tongue touched the other, it would bring death. And that they sat there, so you were reminded of that choice. And that we're always darting our tongue towards a little bit of one or a little bit of the other.
Yeah, it's true. Amora says, so how do you develop this radical presence when what you've been practicing all your life brought you to a place of doubt and hurt?
Yeah, again, I turned to my elders, and I remember being in the very first sweat lodge I was in. I was filled with doubt and hurt. I was a very hurt teenager at the time. And we got to a point in the ceremony, and the elder said, now I want you to offer water to these stones. It's like a sweat lodge. You're inside of this thing. There's hot stones in there, and it's all this steam. And he said, I'm gonna have you send a voice for all the things that have ever gone wrong. And I was mad. Oh, I got mad. Oh, I was so mad. I was like, I'm not doing that. Like all those things. No. I know better than you do, old man. And he said, because if all of those things hadn't happened, you wouldn't be sitting here in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things happened, and you're sitting here right now in this broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
And if any one of those things hadn't happened, you wouldn't be sitting here watching this talk right now.
Right.
And so it begins with saying, okay, thank you, life, for what you've offered me. And now I'm going to develop something new. Right.
That's awesome. I love that, right? Because we're often thinking about, I mean, and we grow up and we realize that the people who are around us, the people who were raising us, those people we call parents and elders, they were people, and that they had their own stuff going on, right? And so maybe they didn't read the whole manual before they tried to teach us what it said, right?
And or they only got half a manual.
Right. They skimmed to the good part. They got the cliff notes. They didn't actually understand practice, right? And so I think many times we're actually, what they say in the South, trying to get by on grandma's religion. Right? And grandma is gone. And now it's up to you to do the work, right? And when we start doing the work, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I think that there's a point where each of us has to ask ourselves, if we're blessed to live a long life, what type of elder do you want to be?
Right.
And how are you going to gain the information? I remember there was a time when I was deep in a ceremony. I've participated in some dance ceremonies for a very long time, and I was in this ceremony. We fast for 4 days and no food, no water, and we're dancing for 4 days in the midsummer. And I was probably 20 years old, and and I went in there and I was arrogant. I was like, I thought I knew everything, and I thought I was the one. I don't know what I thought that meant, but I really did. I was like, I'm the one, and my friends, we're the ones. And I was deep in the ceremony, and the spirits, I say spirits, you can use whatever language you want. But, they said to me, they were like, look at you thinking you're the one. And they were like, you're not the one. And they said, and your friends aren't the one. Wow. They said, not even your generation is the one.
Wow.
They said, it's your children and your children's children. They're the ones. And they said, your job in this life is to learn these ceremonies backwards and forwards, so you have something to give them in the future.
So you can teach them how to practice.
Yeah.
That's huge, right? Because I think, I'm saying I think, and it's because I don't want to really I'm not a pastor. I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do. It's not a process, right? But I know deep in here, right, like that, if there are certain lessons that don't get carried on, then all of us get back in the loop, right? Yeah. And I'm looking at this generation, and I'm looking at the amount of fear that they live with, and I'm looking at the anxiety levels of people because they feel like control is the thing to have rather than freedom and love, right? And when a generation of people are born into a world where people from the beginning of their education are telling them that the planet they live on is going to die. And I'm not saying that it's not. I'm not a global warming denier. I'm not any of that. But I am saying that puts you in a precarious situation, that every environment you're in is unstable.
Well, and you're always apologizing for your existence.
Right.
And the truth is that we're not here to apologize for our existence. We're here actually to claim our place in relationship with creation.
Right.
And that doesn't put us above it.
Nope.
That doesn't put us below it. that means that we're actually it. We're actually a part of it.
Right, right.
Right?
Yeah. No, go.
Well, and that changes everything when you start to view through that perspective. You know, one of the things that I always think about, just again because of these ceremonies I've done in the summertime, where like 300 people come, and I would find myself after these ceremonies coming back to real life and getting on a bus and looking at all these people, and every person I see, I think, you know what? If I was in ceremony with that person, I'd probably love them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I
Because
might not like them,
right.
but I probably would love them on
But
some level.
right. But as people, right, we also have to remember the difference. Like, do you want to practice every day? No. And I hope I'm being super clear here that like my spiritual practice is only strong because I was taught how to practice something else before that, right? Like I was a disciple of dance before I knew that I was connected to the divine in such a beautiful way, right? I was taught that you show up to the bar every day, even if it doesn't feel like it's any different. You do the thing that's asked of you. You take in the critique or the feedback and you give back something better, right? Like it's a forgiveness of what I'm not and a growth into what I know I can become, like constantly. That reciprocity is constantly in the room, right? Yeah. And so I say that because we had this conversation the other night that when people don't know how to practice or they don't have a respect for rehearsal, then they perform these big things without the technique of knowing what gets them there.
And when you watch it, there, like in dance, when you watch it, there's no juju there. There's no oomph behind it. You can just you feel it's often I'll see work and I think, oh, it could have been so much deeper. Like it was here, and okay, yeah, I can appreciate some of what's here, but what would have happened to this process had it gone 2 or 3 levels deeper?
Yes, right. And something you said earlier reminded me, right, of this idea that we sometimes want to prescribe who we're going to be. Right? Like we want to say, no, we're going to be successful. We're going to be this, we're going to be that. And we're not looking inside, like we talked about at the beginning of this conversation. We're not looking inside to say, oh, there's this thing that's growing out of me, but I mean, I can't do that. It doesn't make me any money, or I can't do that. No one will like that, or I'm not good at that. And that's not what I do, right? But in the big picture, our part to play is that piece.
And it's to show up. Yeah. You know, and when I was just laughing with my sister, my best friend, about this because, you know, right when the pandemic hit, my life shut down. Like everything I had built in Portland, Oregon, like closed, and I had no way to make money. And a life of 25 years, there was all this drama in my spiritual community, and there was these divorces that happened. Like literally every part of my life ended. Yeah. And I went home to be with my family. I went home, like physically. Yeah. And my brother was like, well, you can work for me. And I was painting houses. And I called my best friend, and I was crying one day, listening to a podcast, painting the walls. And she's like, what's up? And I was like, I guess I'm just a painter now. And like, not that being a painter is bad, but like, right. I didn't know. I just took a leap. Yeah. Everything turned upside down. And within 6 months, I got a job at Middlebury College.
Yeah. But you surrendered to the process.
And right before that, I was like, I guess I'm a painter now. And you know what I did? I painted with presence. Yeah. I did. I was like, I just turned it into practice. And I was like, okay, this is what I'm doing. Yeah. Because this is my practice.
Like you said earlier, right? It's the task.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the task. So if we can leave people with one thing tonight, Meshi, what would it be for you?
Play. I want you to play. I want you to remember when you were a child and you picked up a stick and it was anything. It could be anything. and you would use that stick for all day. Right. And it turned into many things. And so when we think about ourselves in a spiritual practice, we get so heavy. And the truth is if you want to develop presence and you want to develop a mini practices, just play with it. Play.
Yeah.
Give yourself. I always tell my students, permission is only within you.
Yeah.
And the prison that you put yourself in is 10 times smaller than the prison I would put you in.
Yeah. That's
so
great.
Play.
That's great. I mean, I was just thinking, you're talking about this stick. I mean, like, yeah, it was like used to stir the mud pies, and then it was to beat slap away the dog that might chase you. Then it was a magic wand, like, and I think really, I mean, part of what you're saying, Meshi, is that if we looked at ourselves with that much wonder, we too could be anything.
Yeah.
Right.
And why not? No, I mean, if you say it's a magic wand, then great, it is.
It's a magic wand.
You know, but give yourself permission to play. Because if you can't give yourself permission to play, ooh, this is going to be my tagline, then how can you give your permission to pray?
Ooh, look at you! Right. Because how are you going to send a voice if you don't believe in a voice, or if you can't create a voice?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, listen, I just want to say thank you for joining us. A part of what you're saying is also about, like, if we can't see it, we can't be it. And that's the entire premise of our practice here at Steps and Stages, right? Really building a vision and designing a life we love. For those of you who are ready to do that, our next cohort begins September 12th. And if you are ready to really see the light in yourself so that you could see the light in others and continue to make this place, this space, and the choices that lead you to your ultimate purpose, we would love to work with you. Meshi, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. Thank you to our audience for hanging in there and asking such amazing questions. If you're catching the replay of this, you can jump over to stepwithcrystal.com to schedule your free vision call. And I look forward to making sure that your life is by design and not by default. We'll talk to you soon.